I think a lot of people are scared of contemporary art because they're always trying to ask the question of what is it, rather than just trusting their senses.
I think a lot of people have a weird first impression of art sometimes where, you know, they don't quite understand it. And I think that's like a perfectly okay thing to experience.
Because it's about contemporary art, not necessarily always pleasing, but always challenging.
It's everywhere. It's outdoors, it's in historic spaces, it's in people's homes.
There's pieces just from the community where someone has painted all their boulders like really bright colors, right? They're not part of the Biennale, but it's just like that aesthetic, like they're trying something new in their life and the landscape.
The Biennale is a festival that happens every 2 years, presents contemporary art all around the Bonavista Peninsula. 100-kilometer loop, generally of 20 to 25 different projects, new contemporary art or installations that are responding to historical sites, communities, and all the different sort of fascinating intersections on the peninsula.
I've always been connected to Bonavista. This was my hometown. Of course, most people want to be proud of their hometowns. And I grew up during the moratorium, and I grew up seeing people move away and seeing houses boarded up. It was depressing, it was bothersome.
After the cod moratorium, there was a heaviness around the community and a lot of people left.
About 19,000 fishermen and fish plant workers are out of work.
The entire area is off limits to cod fishing.
To ensure that the northern cod survives as a species. The proposed compensation is hardly more than welfare.
Through high school and those early university years, there were some interesting not-for-profit works that began in the community. The Garrick Theatre reopened, Newfoundland's oldest theatre. There was streetscape development, multi-million-dollar investments from the municipal, provincial, and federal levels of government.
A year ago today, Bonavista had the Queen, it had the Matthew landing as it finished recreating Cabot's historic voyage.
Expecting probably to see more tourists this summer, like over a longer period of time.
We've had tourists ever since what, May month?
Yes.
Coming in, looking at it, what they're doing with it.
There's a big resurgence of people coming back and younger families moving back, and whether or not it's people living here all year long or having summer homes, there's just a lot more popularity and a lot more interest in the town, so that's really nice to see.
Bonavista has over 1,000 heritage buildings. There's no town on the island outside of St. John's that comes even close to 1,000 heritage buildings. Now, many of them were dilapidated, abandoned, what have you, but they were assets. And for me, with a business mind, though no formal training in business, I thought there was an opportunity there to restore those buildings, both commercial and residential, attract new people, attract new business, and use those assets to re-energize the community, and it seems to be working.
My name is Morgan PARNHAM, and I'm the Creative Director of Bonavista Living, Bonavista Creative. We are very big in supporting the arts community, and we love to use all our buildings for cultural events.
Bonavista Living have been a huge, fantastic support, and they have helped to build the stage in which the pool is housed and to install the suspended installation, which is hung at like 15 foot, like right up in the rafters. Without them, I couldn't have put this installation together at all. It would have been a much smaller, pared down version, but we've been able to go for like the bigger, more impressive, immersive experience. It's an installation that kind of confronts the participant with their own mortality, but hopefully in an uplifting way. So it's an installation of approximately 2,000 orbs hanging above a pool of water in which orbs also floating and are sunk to the bottom. The orbs themselves, each one has an organic like specimen inside it. Sometimes it's different flora things that I found and cast in the resin. There's also been donations from the community, mementos from loved ones that people have sent me. Also the insectarium gave me some of their deceased insects to put inside, which is pretty cool. And so these animals and this organic life are kind of frozen in this state of death. So they're on the one hand very beautiful, they almost look like eggs that are about to hatch. And so they kind of evoke the sense of life about to happen. And so it's this kind of convergence of life and death in one sort of installation. And then on the opposite wall, there's a drawing of sort of a pile of dead leaves and plants that turn into growing plant matter, and plants kind of growing up the wall and up the drawing. I want people to think about their own mortality, but hopefully, ultimately, in an uplifting way, to see it as part of the cycle of life and death, to see it as something that's natural, in the contemplation of it, to kind of seize the moments that we have now and make the most of our lives.
My name is Gerald BEAULIEU, and I'm a visual artist based in Prince Edward Island, and we're in Upper Amherst Cove, where I'm installing my work Extinction for the Bonavista Biennale. Extinction is essentially a life-size Albertosaurus dinosaur skeleton, all painted black to look like it's coated in oil. And it'll be operating, moving up and down like an oil pump jack. So they shared the same anatomy. The pump jacks had a head and a spine and legs, and I thought they made a good hybrid, and my dinosaur will be drinking out of an oil drum of crude oil. I've been doing works on environmental issues for a number of years, so I just saw the images and I kept thinking, I wonder if it would work, you know, and I had done a couple of kinetic sculptures, so I was interested in replicating that. I like the senses of sound and motion as well as just the visual, and it also, dealing with climate change, it was, the idea of extinction is that if you don't adapt, that's the inevitable reality, and that's the challenge we face today. People think it's one of probably the premier festivals in the country now, just because how novel it is, its approach to community interaction and the buy-in from community, and there's great artists here.
I was for many years director of Memorial University's art galleries, so we were always thinking about audiences. And at the gallery, we used to take shows right across the province. We never reached the Bonavista Peninsula, and so I met an artist out here, Catherine Baudette. You know, she had a vision of putting art in unconventional places. It was an opportunity for Newfoundland artists to show on a kind of national platform, or to create a national platform. I think the communities certainly were puzzled by the art, or much of it.
Well, I would think that a lot of the people here that live here probably don't see it the same as the people who come from away to see it, you know, because they're more used to contemporary art. I think it would be more of the realistic stuff that they would go in for, you know. I don't think they ever had those colors on the house, for sure, you know, but it looks lovely. You know, it's like the old wallpaper. I don't think the colors were, but the patterns are in the old wallpaper. I remember seeing patterns like that.
When I've been in the Peninsula area before, and I've just been really intrigued by the layers of wallpaper that have come apart, and they reveal the different histories and the different stories of the different people that have lived in those houses.
I see a lot of people looking and Especially those trees up there in the beach that's backward, upside down. Jeez, it's unbelievable, the people that looks. And when I first seen that, I said, they must be there for birds nesting. I said, well, there's a crazy crowd going around, I said.
People respond to contemporary art. People will travel to see it. They'll stay in their communities. They will know something about their culture. You know, I don't think we've necessarily caused, I presume we've encouraged, you know, some of these new enterprises and young people moving in. I think the Union House Arts project is quite directly attributable. There will be, I think, more and more craftspeople probably moving this way.
People that go to places that they enjoy on vacation, a very small percentage of them will actually return and to live there and to start businesses and so on. We came, my wife and I, Peggy, we came here on holiday, and then we bought a house, and then we built an inn. And we now have something like 4,000 or 5,000 people staying here every year. We have created 25 jobs. People were leaving when we came. Bonavista, I think, had 5,000 people. I think it's now only 3,600 or something like that. However, we have now got a resurgence of people coming onto the peninsula, and some of these are seasonal people. They're here for 3 or 4 or 5 months. Others are here year-round. But in a sense, what was happening to rural Newfoundland was the out-migration of intellectual capital. People went and got a university degree and went and got a job on the mainland or in the States or wherever. I think we've now got this sort of intellectual capital coming back here, and I think the Biennale is an example of that.
Sardinia is an immersive experience for the viewer. Yeah, I just want people to sort of imagine like what it would be like to be inside a school of sardines. The idea of Sardinia as an imaginary place where there is this abundance. There are still these teeming schools of fish. I've had my eye on Bonavista for a few years because of its history of fishery, and there are strong parallels obviously with cod and collapse and hardships and the impact that has on culture.
This installation was really to reflect about our consumption and relationship to electricity, and often how electricity is delivered very elegantly to our houses and we take it for granted. Consumption of electricity is also contaminating waters around the world, and how it affects specifically First Nations communities in particular. So this piece was really about that, trying to create an installation that is very elegant, but also can have some social and political conversation around it, and just have people start, you know, having a dialogue and reflection around it.
It's really a nighttime work, so that it's reflective in nature. I'm painting it, and so people with lights or lights from cars on the highway will be able to light it up and sort of animate the work.
Weird how everything kind of goes flat on the corner. Like that comes out right and goes back, and it just goes right across. You can hardly see the corner anymore.
Hopefully there'll be all kinds of reactions from people, you know, like wonder, where does this come from, what's happening here? But really, I think the nature of it is, hopefully it's going to be sort of a fleeting kind of feeling, like a very temporal, ephemeral kind of work, whereby it looks a little bit maybe ghostly or like an apparition, just based on the way the light plays with its surface. You know, I was thinking during the pandemic that really people really didn't have that ability to get away and experience nature so much. You know, we were all stuck in our houses and we couldn't travel from place to place. And so this is a kind of a tribute to that, whereby it feels hopefully like an ever-present kind of an image, a lasting image of a camper that feels like, or maybe symbolizes you know, our desire to get away.
There are so many little nooks and crannies to experience and explore here, and it's like things you wouldn't expect to find. Me not being from here, like I first came here, and the first week I was here, I literally walked around Bonavista for like 3 hours. And I was just like, I just have to like see what's around. Stumbling across like the bicycle cafe just up the road.
I'm kind of really hidden away, as you can tell, and it's hard for people to find me, but when they do find me, they're very happy. But there's I think two installations, one on each side of me, or is that 3, where when people come and they see the installation, speak to the artist, then they happen upon the cafe, and then it's kind of like a little bonus. So it certainly has brought a lot more visibility.
Well, I just graduated from Grenfell. I just did my BFA. And I think this has just kind of been, I've just really jumped in the water here. And, you know, like just finishing my undergrad and like having these opportunities, it's so important because I've just really made a lot of really great connections while I've been out here. I think this community is really good at uplifting each other and supporting each other in their work, and I'm just really glad to be a part of that. And you know, it's nice to see like supporting Robin and installing her work. You know, it's a support that you often get reflected back.
My name is Robin Love, and my piece is called Unhistoric Acts. We are installing this black fabric on one of the fish flakes that's right near the Mockbeggar plantation. And the black fabric is embroidered with names of women from the 1935 census. So from all over the Bonavista Peninsula, but mainly focused on this part of the peninsula. In the course of doing some research for a different project, I started to realize that the women in the communities did the vast majority of the work on the fish flakes, processing the cod, in addition to all their other duties. But this is not something that has really ever been really honored or even acknowledged, in fact. It was very hard to find out this information. There's hundreds of books written about the men out on the water, but there's very little written about what women did as part of the inshore fishery. So I thought it was an opportunity to kind of draw attention to this and honor their labor. Indigenous women got assimilated into the settler culture, and their names were often changed, and often to Mary. If you think about Mary March, that wasn't her name, but that was her name that was given to her as part of a sort of enforced assimilation. So, imperfect though it may be, it was a way to just acknowledge that the history of this land is very complex, and the history of women on this land is complex.
Under the flag of England, John Cabot set sail from Bristol in search of the Orient. What he found was Newfoundland.
That landfall then, 500 years ago, marked the beginning of European settlement of North America, and it shaped the development of Canada and of this province. This year, we're celebrating 500 years of Cabot's arrival and all that that entails.
From Cape Bonavista to the coast of Labrador, this rugged land of beauty is yours to explore. John Cabot and the Matthew is how it all began, and it's ours to discover now this Newfoundland.
Well, it means a great lot. It means a lot to see the Cabot here celebrate 500 years. Yeah.
The rebirth of Newfoundland.
Rebirth, yeah, that's true.
The rebirth of Newfoundland.
We love John Cabot.
I happened to see the John Cabot statue, and I immediately was drawn to wanting to do some sort of intervention with it. I didn't want to do anything that would necessarily harm the statue because I can understand the value within the community to have, you know, this important landmark, and I understand Newfoundland as being someone who has strong connections here. I didn't want to be that person who comes along and like defaces it in any way, or, you know, tries to tear it down in this moment where a lot of colonial statues are being torn down. But I was thinking I would love to erase it from the landscape while I'm here. And so I was thinking it would be quite interesting to create this mound of mulch that would cover completely the statue, not harming it, not being invasive, but just covering the statue.
There was concern based on Bonavista our municipal and our regional branding around discovery and the history of exploration that some were not overly comfortable with the idea of covering the statue. The town was really unable to commit to that space in the end and communicated that months ago to the Biennale organization, but offered other options for locations in the community, and the artist accepted one of those options. I think Long Beach is where he's doing his installation now.
Through a series of decisions that I wasn't a part of, the town had initially accepted and said that I could do this project, and then reneged or revoked my permission to do the mulch pile with only about 4 weeks before the biennial opened. So I had to recalibrate and come up with a new project. They presented this specific site. The installation is actually pulling from text by John Day, who was one of the people on the Matthew as John Cabot's expedition to North America, and specifically looking at any information that may have revealed that there were people here before. I'm just trying to think about various ways of activating the beach, considering this particular site as a potential site for Indigenous recognition. You know, thinking about, well, if landfall is a recognition of European colonization, what are ways in which we can honor pre-colonial human histories and activities? And so I was thinking, well, if I've been displaced with my work from the landfall site and I've been given this site, well, then maybe I should embrace that and think about it as a potential place where human activity happened.
I think Logan is an Indigenous artist, as someone who's a Canadian research chair at the University of Waterloo in Indigenous issues, is someone who's thinking deeply, and also as a Newfoundlander, someone who grew up on island and is aware of some of the stories that we tell ourselves. And I think Logan's thinking really sensitively about some of those histories and the place, Bonavista in particular, and some of the historical frameworks that have developed to promote some of those ideas, but I think in certain ways they are stories that we tell ourselves, or that have led to some complacency around things, or that become ingrained ideas that aren't always, that deserve to be questioned, that deserve to be thought through in this moment of national reckoning with a colonial history.
I think we're all for expansion of understanding and learning opportunities within our history, and the mutual history of those that are of European descent and those that are of Indigenous descent, and how they may blend, and how there may be misunderstandings that we may not be aware of that may come out through some of these pieces and installations throughout the regions. I believe strongly in public art and exposing everyone from every age group in the community to public art. I think it really gives the population in the region and the visitor a different exposure and a different way to look at the world around them. And I think we all need to do that from time to time.
That's the job of the artist. I mean, it's the whole idea is to get the mind engaged in perhaps another way of thinking or seeing something. And contemporary art particularly does that. I think people sometimes are a bit disappointed and say, well, it's not cute or lovely to look at. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to get you to thinking. And we all like the idea of thinking a little differently and thinking of ourselves as being innovators and things like that. And art should stimulate some of that.
All of us who've been involved in this have believed art has a great deal of power and makes people think in different ways. It's relevant to life today.
Sometimes it's hard to get the art world to take notice of what we're doing here, and so I think having big festivals like this that have a local and a national and an international reach is really, really important and integral for us.
I've been sort of in awe of this Biennale.
People are really curious, coming by, asking questions. I feel like there's a real embrace of this project.
It's the juxtaposition of extremes. You have this bucolic surrounding, and then you have somebody that has a whole other concept about color, shape, and form.
Gives people a chance to explore the peninsula. For people that haven't been here before, it's like it's a way of, you know, charting a course.
Bonavista is one of those rural anomalies where you have a high density of creative people. You have a lot of creators moving in. You have a lot of young families and thus a lot of energy. So you have a real capture of the whole spectrum here, from the very young to the very old, to the very conservative, to a growing LGBTQ community. So it's quite diverse and, in my mind, a very healthy town compared to maybe where we were as a community a number of years ago, socioeconomically depressed, very reliant on a single sector, and now we've diversified greatly. So definitely head in the right direction.